speech. Next up, we have Nilofer Khan.
How many of you have heard of spoken word poetry? Okay, good, I see some hands. So I will begin my speech by performing a poem that I wrote a week after my mother died in May 2013. And when portions of this poem speak to you, I want you to snap your fingers, just like that. Let me hear it? Great. Okay, here we go. I am sorry. As those words reach your ears, you sit somewhere on the crossroads of losing yourself to trying to make sense of it all in a hurry. With cupped hands, you try to hold the hailstorm falling from the sky, only to realize that you are being showered by the dust of your own crumbling worlds, spiraling to the ground faster than you can hold. You find yourself gripping air like you're holding on to a tightening rope to be blinded by choking smoke, but it's not the smoke that chokes you. It's the memories that you had with her. Every memory of hers rises in a bubble and floats around you. You want to move ahead, but the path ahead is filled with way too many bubbles, and you can't look ahead like the first time you boarded that flight to get out there in the world and she was at the airport. Her fingers weaved so perfectly with yours, assuring you that you will find a second home out there. Like the time when you could barely color between the lines and she held your superhero drawing with pride for all to see, even when your superhero wore nothing but red underwear. And you ran to your mother to ask to take the drawing down before your friends could see and she could embarrass you. Like the time you felt the first flutter of butterflies in your stomach having met someone you fancied, and mama looked at you as if to say, I know what you're up to. This was your kingdom, a kingdom that you both built together. The skyline of your kingdom is dotted with many firsts, and you never imagined that this moment today would be your last. And with sorrow that weighs on your shoulders like agony of 1,000 years, you try to move ahead by putting those bubbles of memories aside so you can move forward with no fear, trying to step aside so you don't burst them and lose all her memories in the rubble. But the path that you walk on, it's paved with anger. It's filled with rocks of depression and puddles of self-pity. And you tell yourself that what her doctor did not tell you was how you could bring life to her last few weeks. What her doctor did not tell you was that your grief will go beyond the 5 stages of grief. And they certainly did not tell you that death is hardest on the living. And yet you remember all that mama ever said to you was, believe in yourself because the best is always yet to come. So you tell yourself, I will survive this, even when the only balm to your pain is the feel of her touch that still lingers on your skin. And you tell yourself, you will be all right, even when a part of your world has left the world. And you tell yourself that you will come out of this, even though it's going to take a while. But at some point, your head will come above the surface of water for a breath of fresh air called new life. Because all she ever asked of you to believe was that the best is yet to come and it's always ahead of you. Your hands will open new doors, and behind those doors, her legacy will always, always be yours. Because all she ever asked of you was for you to believe that the best is ahead of you, that she's always alive. She never stopped for death. Death stopped for her. Her light is in you, it's within you, and it will never flicker. And you know that one next day tomorrow, the sun will rise, your eyes will open, your lungs will expand to take in a breath of fresh air, and your feet will place themselves on grass and walk. That is a dream that you have built here together. Because all she asked of you to do was believe that the best is yet to come, for she is never, never truly gone. With that, your grief finds release, and you have finally, at long last, found the courage to move on. Thank you very much. I honestly thought twice whether this would be a good way to start my speech, but my mother is the reason I'm here today, and I thought it would be a very befitting tribute to her to start this way. Excellency Dame Pilit Luisi, graduates, parents and families, guests, esteemed faculty and staff, good evening. Thank you for this honor of speaking at this important occasion. There again is no befitting way to start my speech than this poem I wrote a week after my mother died, stomach cancer, age 49, on 6th of May 2013. That was my last day in St. Lucia. That's how I left St. Lucia. The universe works in mysterious ways. She passed away 6 months before my graduation, which was originally planned for September 2013. Turns out that the universe does work in mysterious ways. The world around me has now shed its skin, and I reinvent myself with it again and again. 4 years later, or 4.5 years later, I stand here before you now on this very happy occasion, recognize some of the faces I had the privilege of learning from. Some of you had the privilege of learning from, the students, all of you, and have become my own woman in this process. I often draw contrasting vivid parallels between the pain of losing my mother before I got to fulfill this dream of earning my MD, and the joy of being raised by a woman with a gladiatorial spirit who vanquished all limitations, religious, culturally, or otherwise. I'm from Saudi Arabia. Allowing me to travel the world and touch lives and be touched in return. Even in her death, she makes me think, what kind of a person am I? Do I focus on the task at hand? Do I dedicate myself to a larger cause than myself? Am I being the best I can be? Am I evolving with the world around me and making use of the finite time that I have? In this graduating class, I know that each of us already are asking those questions. Some of us are working on a very specific goal, for example, getting a 250 plus on the USMLE exams and getting into US residency program, while others will move where the sands of time will take you, and some perhaps others will go towards intersections of medicine and other alternate career paths. As Sarah Kay says, quote, whichever you choose to be, take pride in your work and whatever you do. You can lay bricks until walls are constructed, until a temple is built. Or you can dream towards a temple until you figure out which walls to build and which bricks to lay. You can shape behavior until it changes minds. Or you can change minds until it shapes behavior. You can create options by choice and by example. End of quote. The most important thing is to have faith in what you do, who you are and who you will become, and defend it with gusto, even when the odds are piled high against you. In August 2013, I received the International NOSCL Global Health Prize for Best Essay. And guess what it was about? It was about reinstating humanism in the practice and teaching of medicine. It was a heartfelt essay I wrote a day after my mom died, knowing what she experienced with doctors from her eyes, from her perspective. Often, she was treated as a nameless pincushion, with all those tubes down her throat and all of that, who will very soon become another faceless statistical figure of stomach cancer mortality. The tables had now turned. Instead of being the physician, I was on the other side of the table, being part of the family that received the worst possible news, and a caregiver to a parent with terminal illness, and it all happened overnight. And that might have been the end of my story. Except that it wasn't. Now, I work at the United Nations at Washington, D.C. In August 2015, I won a scholarship by the Open Society Foundations to pursue a master's in health policy in Europe. And from the very start, I knew my thesis, my research will explore the simple question, how do we teach humanism, compassion, communication to our physicians in training today? I set out to explore pedagogical models of learning at the University of California School of Medicine, Irvine, and to define that delicate chasm that exists between medical education, compassion, and the practical practice of medicine as you see it. My thesis that resulted from this research felt like laying the bricks of that temple I just spoke to you about, in hope that a clinical preceptor, a professor at medical school, a medical student, a nursing student, somebody may be reminded of the very core altruistic values that got us into medicine and nursing in the first place, which is helping someone heal, helping someone dream big enough and be healthy enough to achieve that dream and make small changes along your way. It feels that's the kind of temple I believe in and I live in. Today, we're graduating from medical school and nursing school. Sometimes we will be searching for a cause to believe in and fight for, and we will worry and wonder whether medicine or nursing is for us when our plans fall asunder. Oftentimes, we're busy dealing with the task at hand. Oftentimes, we're working 32-hour shifts on the ICU, caring for neonates, studying for medical licensing exams, or holding the hand of your neighborhood teen who just started doing illicit drugs. Sometimes you're falling in love, starting a family, or taking care of yourselves. Know that not always will we have the time to dream or build that temple. The time is always now. Lay the bricks on what spurs you, what inspires you, and what made you choose medicine. We can build its walls later, and while those walls are being built, allow your perspective to change, to be shifted, to be challenged, for that's what keeps you truly alive. As we walk our journey, see the way our path has meandered along our biggest losses and victories alike. Class of 2017, you can be the doctor you want to be. Advocate, disturb the comfortable, comfort the disturbed. I wish you continued fortitude to be a self-starter, like my colleague Candida mentioned. I wish you courage to stay true to yourself, despite all odds, despite being an IMG or a Caribbean graduate, and the odds are piled against you, yes, but you made it so far, and there's no reason why you can't go further. Thank you so very much for allowing me to share my story and my poetry with you. It's been a privilege.